I don't think the electorate will allow Fianna Fáil to try and make a joke of them once again by lining developers' pockets under the guise of providing much needed housing. What you need to do is build housing and provide housing and forget about your friends the developers. Let them look after themselves. Have you heard the joke about the Fianna Fáilers saying that affordable housing is a core party value of theirs? Apparently, after a recent internal Fianna Fáil housing committee, some party members said that housing policy to them is what cycling is to the Greens and Palestine is to the far left. Furthermore, the delivery of an affordable housing is hoped to be seen as a key Fianna Fáil achievement in government. Ah yes, Fianna Fáil, the purveyors of affordable housing, in a land of unicorns, flying pigs, rainbows and bubbles perhaps. But back in reality, we all remember the actual Fianna Fáil property bubble. The bubble that went well and truly bust, leaving homeowners in huge negative equity with defective buildings such as the mica issues in my own constituency of Donegal, apartment buildings with inadequate fire safety and unfinished housing estates. And that's what you're actually doing now as well, and what you're going to do is just increase the price of houses for nobody's benefit except property developers, and that's the only people that's going to benefit from it, because people are going to be screwed for having to actually pay the amount that they're asking for because they're desperate to get on the housing ladder and they want to get involved and own a house and property for themselves, and that's what you're setting out to do. This morning we are here to talk about the Affordable Purchase Shared Equity Scheme for first-time buyers. And I note the Minister said that it's only 75 million of the entire budget, and that means nothing in terms of the overall thing on housing. But what it'll actually do, that 75 million, will actually just bump up the prices, as I said, and that's what will cause the problem. So it doesn't even if nobody takes it up, and nobody benefits from it, nobody actually wants to use this scheme, it will bump up the prices, and that seems to be just what you're intent on. Minister, there's no doubt that we all want affordable housing. There's also no doubt that the reality of affordable housing and the skewed ideas of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are miles apart. Actually, in a surprising turn of events, a number of Dublin City Councillors, Fine Gael councillors, have apparently written to you to urge you to scrap the shared equity scheme. These 9 Fine Gael councillors, one of whom works with the Minister for Finance, have warned that this Fianna Fáil demand-side measure risks the return to the failed housing policies of the Celtic Tiger era. Wait, Minister, it's not just opposition parties in Dublin, Fine Gael councillors against the shared equity scheme. That's a sentence I thought I would never have to say. The Central Bank also has expressed concerns that your ill-advised shared equity scheme could increase property prices and foist unaffordable debt on mortgage holders. And there's more. The ESRI, the Economic and Social Research Institute, has also said that the shared equity part of the scheme will likely lead to price increases, mainly because of the significant dearth in supply. Yesterday, the Joint Housing Committee undertook pre-legislative scrutiny of the Affordable Housing Bill. The committee was looking at all elements of the bill, including the cost rental, and heard from the Housing Alliance and others regarding the shared equity scheme. ESRI researchers stress that the constrained state of our housing sector means that the scheme will be very likely lead to higher house prices. What a surprise, but that's what you actually want to happen, so that's okay as far as you're concerned. Constrained is certainly a constrained way of describing our housing supply. I was looking on daft.ie, and there are 0 properties to rent in my hometown of Killybegs. There are just 40 properties listed to rent in the entire county of Donegal. While house prices aren't off the scale like Dublin or other urban centres, Donegal had the third highest rise average increase in house prices across the country. The Real Estate Alliance published information in September of last year, and Highland Radio reported that they said that houses are taking on an average of 3 weeks less to sell across the country, driven by a combination of low supply and highly motivated buyers, a shift in market behaviour that sector has not experienced in the last decade. Donegal also has the lowest disposable income in the whole country, with high rates of forced ownership and other living costs that must be factored into the housing and rental market there. I have recently asked a number of parliamentary questions about the current state of housing in Donegal and was informed that the total number of households qualified for social housing support in Donegal in 2019 was 926. Yet at the end of Q3 2020, there were almost 1,900 people in HAP properties and an additional 510 in active RAS tenancies in the county. In a PQ reply, I was informed that the 2020 Social Housing Assessment Report was delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but that work is ongoing and that the summary report of the 2020 assessment will be published in due course. The motion before us today says that the origins of the scheme have come from 2 policy papers published by the Irish Institutional Property and Property Industry Management Properties Industry Ireland in March and May 2020, and the scheme was not included in Fianna Fáil's election manifesto or previously stated as Fianna Fáil policy. It makes you wonder who is the ear of the Minister and Department colleagues. Who is planting these ideas? A cynic would think that Fianna Fáil wants house prices to continue to rise. God forbid you wouldn't want that. The scheme has been tried and tested in the UK and resulted in higher house prices. The motion outlines numerous examples of this failure in England. For example, in 2020, a report published by the Centre for Economic Performance at the London School of Economics found that in London, the shared equity loan scheme led to a 6% increase in house prices. And I'm always amazed at how we actually seem to mimic and follow everything that happens in England. Years later, when they've already decided that it doesn't work, we'll actually start implementing it, rather than maybe we should cop ourselves on and actually look at the outcomes that they decide on and decide things don't work and don't implement them. In September 2020, our own officials in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform expressed concern that a shared equity loan scheme will push up prices. The then Secretary-General of DPER, Robert Watt, said that the property industry wants an equity scheme because it will increase prices. The government must roll back and remove the Affordable Purchase Shared Equity Scheme from the general scheme and final version of the Affordable Housing Bill 2021 before it comes. The 75 million allocated to the scheme should be redirected to the Service Sites Fund for local authorities and approved housing bodies delivery of affordable homes to rent and buy. And the reality is it's not the 75 million bill expenditure on this scheme. It's the actual message that it sends out that house prices will go up and push up, and that's what's happening, and that's what you intend to do. And look, that's obviously what the government wants to happen, or what the Fianna Fáil wants to happen. So you're going to make it happen. So just why didn't you just say it as well, rather than taking up this farce of that you're actually doing it to reduce house prices? I don't think the electorate will allow Fianna Fáil to try and make a joke of them once again by lining developers' pockets under the guise of providing much-needed housing. What you need to do is build housing and provide housing, and forget about your friends, the developers. Let them look after themselves.